You're listening to the Just Go Bike podcast. We're all about the culture of bicycling just for the fun of it. Your host, Kathy Murphy from the Morphology podcast and Andrea Parrott from Parrott Talk are joined by a wide variety of guests each week that delve into the social side of cycling. With tales from RAGBRAI Nation, come for the bikes, stay for the fun, and leave with a smile. And now, here are your hosts, Murph.
Hey, that's me.
And AP.
And that's me. Hi, Murph.
Hey, AP, what's shaking?
I am shaking bacon. No, actually, I'm really great. We're having like post RAGBRAI things going on over here at the office. I'm at the RAGBRAI HQ today, and I actually brought both of my dogs, which is something I do not dare to do during crazy busy RAGBRAI preparation season. So mainly because they're just so friendly and excitable that they just get up in everybody's business and they get hair all over the merchandise, and nobody needs that.
So it sounds like things are kind of toned down a little bit post RAGBRAI at the office.
That's right. Yeah. So everything's all cleaned up and organized, and they're doing inventory and stuff, but it's appropriate for dogs to be here now, and it's actually kind of quiet, which is just kind of a little treat after the busyness of the ride, although it won't stay this way for long, of course. So,
yeah.
So how are you doing? What's up in Morphology world?
It's good. I am getting ready to head west to Colorado for not one, but 2 bike adventures.
Oh, delightful. Where to?
Okay, first I'm going to Steamboat Springs it's called the SBT Gravel event, which some people race it. I will be riding it. And then from there, I immediately go to Durango for a multi-day ride with Colorado's ride. So I am hoping, I know my lungs will not be ready because that is some very high elevation, but I hope my legs are still strong from RAGBRAI.
Oh, I think you're going to be fine. And it sounds amazing. And Colorado's ride is run by our friend Bill Plock. So good luck to him, and I hope good luck to you, because that's a tough ride.
Yeah, I know. We'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be super fun, and I can't wait to follow all your adventures on social media as you bike across Colorado in various ways.
Yes, and I have not had the opportunity yet to get my newest bike painted pink. So, dare I say I'm almost getting used to it, having it blend in with all the other bikes. I don't know.
You're in incognito mode.
I know, but I want it to be just like all my other bikes. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I think that is long overdue. Maybe it'll be your little treat when you come back from Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm excited for this trip. It's going to be really fun. But speaking of fun, we should probably plug the upcoming ride that's happening in Central Iowa.
That's right. The Great Iowa Fall Ride is happening on September 14th. So mark your calendars to come on down to Des Moines. Actually, we're having an open house on the 13th as well.
Cool. Yeah.
Go over then if you want to have even more of the RAGBRAI team. Murph and I will be there at the fall ride, and I think we're going to be having a little fun out there, maybe just a little, having some apple cider donuts and pumpkin everything. And if you'd like some more details on the fall ride, this year it's more of a choose your own adventure type ride where you just enjoy the beauty of Des Moines' many, many bike trails, along with all of your new best friends that you made on RAGBRAI. Come on down to the fall ride. You can find out about it on social media at the Great Iowa Fall Ride on Facebook and Instagram, or on the RAGBRAI website. We have a tab about it.
Well, yes, as you said, I know I'll be there. You know what we should do? Maybe we should try and record live or record with riders while we're there.
Ooh, I love that. It was so fun to do that on the Mississippi River in Burlington. I think we should do that.
Yeah. All right. Stay tuned for that. But so that brings us to this episode, which is some more rider recaps.
I love these. Who's on this week?
This week we have Randy, Sonya, and Barb. Do you want a little sneak peek of each?
Just give me the 2-cent recap of everybody.
Okay. So Randy's from DC, and he called this year his Revenge Tour. So you'll have to listen in to find out what he means by that. Then there's Sonya. She's from Maxwell, Iowa, and she rode RAGBRAI for the 27th time.
Wow.
Yeah. This year her daughter joined her, so that's a great story too.
Oh, cool.
And then finally, Barb from Des Moines is on to talk about her experience. And riders may have seen her on the route. Her and her team, they all had matching shirts every day, like the same color. But the team and herself were loaded down on their bikes with tanks of oxygen.
Oh.
And Barb uses oxygen due to, hopefully I'm going to say this right, but the effects of scleroderma. And she is actually on a list for a double lung transplant. So amazing story. The fact that she was able to ride RAGBRAI is, an amazing feat in itself. So great stories.
That's so impressive. I can't wait to hear from all of them. It's like having my friends from RAGBRAI come back and send a little message to the Just Go Bike podcast listeners and ourselves. So I can't wait to hear them.
All right. How are you doing, Sonya?
I'm doing well. How are you, Kathy?
Very good. It's nice to have you on to tell your story, your RAGBRAI experience. So before we get into that, will you tell the listeners either where you're from or where you live now?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Southwest Iowa, Griswold, which we actually rode through this year on RAGBRAI.
Oh, yeah.
And right now my husband and I live outside of Maxwell, which is in central Iowa.
Okay. Griswold, they did it up right with their theme, with the Christmas Vacation National Lampoon theme. It was pretty fun.
I'm so proud of them. They did a great job.
I agree. And I can say that about almost every community. I mean, everyone seemed to really step it up this year, don't you think?
I agree. Sometimes you worry about those small towns, and there wasn't one that did not give it 100% or more. It was great to see.
Yep. I of course, I don't recall what town. Might have been Milo, where there was a man walking around and he was like in his overalls and, probably a farmer type person, retired. And he was telling everyone how the population of whatever community it was, and it was less than 100 people. And I was just like, how are they not just completely overwhelmed with the thousands and thousands of people that swoop in for the day or for a few hours and then they swoop out?
Exactly. That's year after year. That's what gets me. And I think that's what gets a lot of people coming back, especially the out-of-staters and even the people from other countries. They're like, the hospitality and the way these people roll out the red carpet.
Yeah.
For us, for just, you're maybe in a town an hour or two and then you roll out and the next town is just as good.
Right. I always wonder, I don't want to stick around long enough, but I would like to see all of those towns the next day if they are all just like, we're laying on the couch for the rest of the week.
Right. With their feet up. Deserved. Yes.
Well, was this your first RAGBRAI this year?
This was not. I went back and found my tally sheet. This was my 27th RAGBRAI.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's in my blood.
Wow, that's amazing. So maybe in a nutshell, like tell me, because I'm about the same as you as far as how many RAGBRAIs, but I've done it every way. I've done it in the team bus. I've done it in an RV. I've done it self-contained. And now I'm lucky enough to have hotels. But how do you do RAGBRAI?
Okay, well, can I start at the beginning? I started way back when I was 12. My brother actually went on RAGBRAI 8 in 1980. Him and some of his high school friends, and then one of the moms just supported them with their good old station wagon. And then had such a good time that the parents and the boys went back in 81. And then the next year, us little sisters were like, hello, when's our turn? So that year, the boys were all lifeguards, or most of them were lifeguards at that point. They stayed home, and the parents and sisters went. So 1982 was my first one. I did half days, and it was wonderful. And back then, the Century Day wasn't an option. It was 100 miles.
Oh, wow. And you were 12?
I was 12.
Wow.
And that was I wanted to do the whole day, and God bless my parents for letting me do that and helping me through that, because I'm sure it wasn't easy having a teenager. on a bike all day long.
Right. And, think of the discipline. Like, I don't know if when I was 12 years old, I mean, I might have grandiose ideas, but I bet you my parents would be like, we already know you're not going to do it.
Well, my dad was a teacher and coach, so he was pretty motivating.
Oh, that's great. So then fast forward 27 years, I mean, have you seen dramatic change?
Oh my gosh. So many changes. Just, I would say in the amount of support. And by that, I mean, stands and food and water along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Those early years, it wasn't as prevalent. I mean, it wasn't like we starved by any means, but lots more food vendors along the way, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously more people. And, in those early years, I was probably seeing a different side of RAGBRAI than maybe some people see today. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, way back in the day, I mean, it was a luxury because people didn't have smartphones or Facebook or, like if you took a picture, you had to go get it developed. So that was a much more interesting time, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I remember we had sticky notes, or would get a piece of paper from the information booth in town and go to the post office. Post offices were huge because almost every town had one.
Mm-hmm.
And you would attach that to the window. Sonya here, 10:30, leaving at whatever. And you just do a handwritten note and hope that, I would hope that my parents would find it, or whoever I was writing with.
Oh my gosh.
And we survived. It was fine. It was great. And I, continued to do it. So
amazing.
It's all good.
And then I guess fast forward to this year. How did you do RAGBRAI this year, and who were you with?
Sure. So this year, it was my daughter, Mary, she's 20, and myself and my brother, and his wife joined us for a couple days too. And we used my dad's pickup. And we, when you've lived in the state for over 5 decades and you've done so many RAGBRAIs, you usually know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody
Mm-hmm.
in an overnight town. And so we hooked up with homes every night. We did stay with my mom in Griswold for 2 nights because why not when it's between Atlantic and Red Oak?
Right. Does she happen to bake pie?
We told her not to worry about food. She's got enough on her plate right now. And so we ate at a friend's restaurant in Red Oak and grabbed something in Atlantic before we left there those 2 nights. So she was off the hook.
I didn't know if maybe she made pie for all of the riders coming through.
No, she did. She helped with the booth up at the Cass County Museum, though.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to go in there?
Yes, I did. And we found out, every time somebody signs their guest book, it goes towards
grant money.
Money. And the lady, it might have been your mom, I'm not sure, but said that they had filled 20 pages of riders who came through to see the museum. So we were super excited for them.
It was a good day. They were super happy with the turnout.
Ah, that's awesome. Well, okay, so you and your daughter and your brother cruising along, biking across Iowa. Anything memorable that you want to share with listeners?
Well, my daughter did it. I think she did it in 17 or 18 and 18 or 18 and 19, two
Mm-hmm.
of those years.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was in middle school then. So it was high school sports, I could tell, had taught her a lot. And she persevered much better this time and just enjoyed it a whole lot more. So that was fantastic to see. Of course, I enjoy being a mother, but you're trained to, when you're out there on the bike all day, you have to, make sure you're doing okay and
Right.
hydrating and eating. And if you have a child along, God bless all those parents, because it's mentally exhausting
Mm-hmm.
then. And so this year she was more than capable of, just keeping up and taking care of herself. And it was awesome. She rode really strong.
That's good. And to know that she came back, if this is her third time, like she must have enjoyed something that she wanted to come back and hang out with Mom again.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, she'll be the third generation because my parents both did it and myself and now her. So I don't think there's much luck for my other two doing it. So I at least have one.
Okay. So you've got 27 years of doing RAGBRAI under your belt. I need to ask this question. When you think about all the stuff that you packed, did you pack too much, not enough, or just right?
I probably overpacked just a little. Yeah, sometimes we cut out on day 7. It gets a little crazy at the river and all that, so we didn't do day 7 this year. But considering we had homes and we knew we were going to have laundry every night, which is super nice.
Yeah.
I probably overpacked a little. Yeah,
I would agree. And the interesting thing though is if it would have been a different temperature, if it would have been colder in the evenings, then I probably would have said I underpacked. But I definitely came home with clean sweatshirts and pants and socks and all that.
Right, because I always pack a quarter zip long sleeve, and I always pack leggings and a rain jacket. I fortunately didn't need any of that. I mean, whoever ordered the weather, it was perfect.
I think when we did the Overnight Town podcast interviews, I think there were 3 communities that basically said they had ordered really good weather. And I thought, you guys are going to have to really, step it up. But somehow they were right, along with Matt Phippen.
Absolutely.
Knowing that this was the hilliest, possibly the hardest RAGBRAI on record, did you feel like you trained properly?
I did. I had nearly 2,300 miles in, and I'm counting that's my yearly total starting January 1st. That's the most I've ever had in. And I had done the Katy Trail last month. So some long days on that too. Yeah, I think as long as you just, bike consistently throughout the summer and get a little road riding and get some hills in. If your rear end is in shape, then you'll be good to go.
Yeah. And the people watching helps so much because
oh my gosh,
you kind of don't even really think as hard about those hills when you're just watching somebody, wearing some goofy outfit or playing their music or whatever.
Yeah, the music is key to me. Like if I'm going up a hill and, somebody's got a good tune going on or even kind of an unusual tune, yeah, you forget the pain that you're in and you're like, okay, I'm going to sing along or I'm going to figure out what this song is.
Yeah. Okay, last question.
Sure.
And maybe you'll say it's just music, but any advice you would give to someone who maybe hasn't done RAGBRAI yet and is thinking about it?
If they're thinking about it, definitely do it. I would say, this is the question I've been thinking about a lot because it's hard just to give one piece.
Right.
I would say practice writing in groups as much as possible. And that goes with doing group rides. I would, riding on the trail is great. And you are usually meeting or passing people on the trail, but riding in a group is different, and just being able to do that and navigate that, I think, is pretty important for not only your safety and enjoyment, but everyone's safety and enjoyment.
I completely agree. Even though, typically on RAGBRAI, the roads aren't closed to vehicle traffic, but they're pretty sparse as far as cars. So riders really spread out on both lanes, but still you have to be mindful of what's happening all around you because people can be unpredictable.
Yes, I agree. Ride defensively.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And do you think Mary will come back for another year of RAGBRAI?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she said, even on the Atlantic to Winterset day, I think it was, and that was a tough day. She's like, so because the other 2 she did were both south also. So she's never done a northern route. And she's like, is it always like this? I'm like, well, no, honey. I said, when we go up north, the first 5 days are a piece of cake until you get over to, past Charles City,
Yeah.
and then you get hilly. But by then your legs and butt are in shape, so it doesn't matter. She's like, all right, I'm doing a northern route next.
Well, let's cross our fingers. RAGBRAI LII will be not south again.
Yes, let's hope.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Have fun with the rest of your interviews.
Well, next up we have Randy Smith. Hey, Randy.
Hey, Murph.
Will you tell the listeners, how about tell the listeners where you're from, where you are right now, but where you live?
All right. I am from Burke, Virginia, which is about 20 miles west of D.C., out in the suburbs. But I am from Elkhorn, Iowa, and Audubon, Iowa, in the southwest corner. And right now I'm in a Costco parking lot in Iowa talking with you for the podcast.
So you loved Iowa and RAGBRAI so much you decided to stick around longer, huh?
It's a little bit deeper story than that, Murph, why I'm still here.
Well, I know based on the notes that you sent over that you have a pretty good story last year RAGBRAI versus this year. So let's get into it. Tell the listeners your story.
Well, last year was my first attempt at RAGBRAI. I remember RAGBRAI coming through Audubon. I must have been in my teens, and I rode along with the riders for about 300 yards on my 10-speed and decided this was the most idiotic group of people I had ever met in my life when they were going all the way across Iowa, right? So, put a, date stamp, done with RAGBRAI at 15 or 16 or whatever it was. And then I aged and joined the Air Force, left Iowa forever. And last year, 50th anniversary, I had started riding bikes. So last year was going to be my glorious first attempt at RAGBRAI and finish it all. So that's what brought me here last year.
Okay. And you got some smarts in your head from when you were 15 to current time.
Yeah. And so that's the start of my story of failure for last year. I did extremely well on days 1 through 3. Got a great picture of me inside of Jack Trice Stadium. Unfortunately, about 5 minutes across the walkover, and I actually went back and redid the route. I got to ride through Stuart Smith Park on the way to my campground with Bike World Iowa. I was on a charter, and on the extremely treacherous, level, flat, multi-use path going through Stuart Smith Park, my front wheel went off as someone came up beside me. There's plenty of room for 2 bikes, but just one of those things, front wheel jackknife, and those stories you hear about. I ended up on my back with an IV and the guys on the gator as my bike flipped and my ankle tried to stop it from flipping.
Oh no.
News alert, my ankle lost. And it made one of those sounds that when you hear it, something bad has happened. But 3 lovely ladies came upon me and stopped and pulled my phone out of my bag. The gator made it there quick. I took one look down and said, I don't want to look down there again.
Oh, no.
And the emergency room folks got me. Fantastic. They all have RAGBRAI stories, right? So I was able to talk as they go. I got to visit the Mercy emergency department, and they kind of put my ankle a little bit straight, and they looked at it, and the one orthopedic surgeon said, nope, I'm not touching that. And so, but that's where the story gets better. Dr. Christy Christopherson from McFarland Clinic. Sorry if you're not allowed shout outs.
You can shout out as much as you want.
In Christy we trust. 36 hours later, she had cut me open and inserted 10 screws in a plate.
Wow.
And now that's the beginning of the revenge tour. So, right, I mean, fail once, you have to redeem yourself. So this year was about redemption. I've got two screws less, but with 8 screws and a plate, I have now successfully finished a RAGBRAI. So
Yay.
RAGBRAI 51 is better. Yay!
And with a, I guess it's not a bionic ankle, but it's got to be stronger than it was before.
Right. I mean, that's the real good news. Is at the end of it, I was kind of wondering, my right ankle, which was undamaged, hurt more than my left ankle, which maybe 8 screws and a plate help you complete RAGBRAI. I don't know, but
maybe
they're going to be gone tomorrow. I go back under the knife for my 3rd time tomorrow, back up in Ames, and we are going to take 8 screws and a plate out. So that's why I get to hang around Iowa for a couple more weeks.
Oh, so wait, so the parts that were holding your leg together and made it all, workable again, they can take them out?
They can, well, I learned all kinds of big words, like my bone is now 90% ossified, so we're clear to take them out. And with all those screws and plates, every day I can feel it in different places, and when I take my socks off and everything. So, I mean, we're pulling everything out, right? Wasn't there when I was born, so it's not going to be there when I die. They come out.
Sure. So, okay, so you're the what'd you call it? The revenge tour?
The revenge tour, right?
Okay.
I did it on a select Facebook to my family to let them know that I hadn't crashed again. So we had a revenge tour following on Facebook.
And success. So
success.
Yeah. What are some highlights of this year?
I think we talked about it, and there was like really 2 highlights for me. And one was just kind of like how it's nice to come back to Iowa. I was in Winterset, we completed it, and I figured, all right, it's time for for maybe a beverage afterwards. And I was walking by a restaurant called The Drift in Winterset. Mm-hmm. And Winterset was such a cool town, and looked in, all the chairs are taken, and these people at the front table outside said, hey, just come sit down with us. And so ended up talking with them, and they were they were part owners of it, and a wonderful conversation about, where I can ask them, I'm someone who comes back to Iowa and goes, okay, I'm in DC, what's Winterset like? It's kind of close, and just a neat conversation with people who are committed to their community and a business, which is just cool no matter what the business is and what community, right? That tie to community.
Yeah.
The other highlight or, wish that I could have done is I guess I should figure it out. Like, if I stopped at every lemonade stand where kids are selling lemonade for $1, I think that's my next desire if I do another one. All the vendors and everything are great, and, and love all of that as you go by. But, when you're on mile 63 of 80, between towns, and there's kids selling lemonade or whatever, it makes me think back to when that first RAGBRAI that I remember from Audubon, where it's like, man, I wish I had talked to some of the variety of people who come through.
Yeah. Because
it really opens you up to all the different things outside of Iowa. And I didn't have a very good feeling for that when I was in my teens. Something I wish I had. So I'm going to stop at more lemonade stands the next time that I come through on RAGBRAI.
I love it. I actually waited in line at a lemonade stand, and the sign clearly said that they were sold out of lemonade. Mm-hmm. But the little girl was so darn cute, and she was still yelling and cheering us on. So I waited in line to give her $1 just because she was there. It was so sweet.
There you go. Cheers for you. And that, I mean, it feels good. And that's kind of, that interaction where who knows that girl might remember, 15 years from now going, these neat people and what that leads to. So good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was fun. I have the cutest picture of her. So hopefully, yeah, when she's, in her teens or older, that she'll be on RAGBRAI as a rider.
Yep.
So you mentioned briefly, something with the Air Force. Did you ride with the Air Force team this year, or were you on a different team, or were you solo?
I was, as solo as I wanted to be. I went with the Bike World Iowa charter.
Mm-hmm.
They were fantastic last year when they had to find my bags and get it back to Des Moines. And come on, first RAGBRAI. I'm not going solo yet. I splurged and, I figured last year all I had to do was go from point A to point B. They have the tent, everything, life would be easy. And they were so great. I went with them again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the days of, I remember people like going, okay, I'm going to bring a hammock and my bike 40 years ago and go do RAGBRAI. I'll take a little bit more help with that. So they were great.
And I dare say, the older we all get, maybe the smarter we get, because, sleeping in a hammock in the same clothes all week was probably cool when I was 20, but not anymore.
20 sounds good, right? It's like, I could do that when I'm 20.
And
I still look good, who knows?
Exactly, yeah. So now you've done, let's just call it 1.5 RAGBRAIs. Do you think you'll come back and do it again?
I think I will. No matter how far we go away, like I said, I joined the Air Force, was in for 30 years, never looked back at Iowa. And not because there's something against Iowa, because you get taken all over the world. And that was kind of my introduction to the world. So I still have family in Iowa. Mm-hmm. And, so I'll come back and tie this into my 2-week trip. Hopefully in future RAGBRAIs, I won't, attach surgeries to it, extended recovery time in Iowa. This is the last one. Christy's going to, pull everything out and I'm done. And we go back. But yeah, I would love to, the next one I do or the next one after, I would love to do the kind of RV route and maybe bring my kids, and maybe I can convince them to do, switch days amongst them or something creative to get them back and experience RAGBRAI. Because, there's a lot of different ways people experience, whether it's a team or RV or doing it by yourself. So it's something I'd like my kids to see and come back. My kids are old, right? They're in their 20s, so they and their families to experience it also.
Yeah, and AP and I talk about that all the time, that there's no wrong way to do RAGBRAI. You can do it however you choose, and you'll have an amazing experience.
And there's a RAGBRAI baggers community out there. So, that's also a possible one, too, to go, what if I really did bring the other bike with panniers and other stuff on it? And, and the RAGBRAI, the support is fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might have to walk 2 minutes longer than you want to a shower, but there's showers out there. Everything's there. So it's a really neat experience.
Yes. All right, Randy, we're going to cheer you on and hope that next time you come do RAGBRAI, there will be no emergency rooms involved or no surgeries. But thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate what you guys do, and look forward to the next Just Go Do RAGBRAI. No more revenge tours, just enjoyment tours.
Okay, next up, we actually have 2 guests on the podcast. So I'd like to welcome Barb and Randine. How are you guys doing?
Great. Thanks, Murph, for having us.
Good.
You bet. And you have an amazing story, possibly a one-of-a-kind story for RAGBRAI. But before we get into that, can you both tell the listeners either where you live now or where you grew up?
Sure. This is Barb. I'll start. And I currently live in Des Moines, Iowa. But Randine and I, we have been childhood friends. We've been friends since 7th grade. We were both born and raised in Estherville, Iowa.
Oh, okay.
And I am Randine, and I live in Minnesota, Lakefield, Minnesota.
Ah, okay. And you both were on RAGBRAI this year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. How many times have each of you done RAGBRAI?
This was our fourth time doing RAGBRAI. And each time we've done it, we've always done it together. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you have to give the listeners, maybe Barb, you could start with how your RAGBRAI was so unique.
Yeah, so this year was definitely unique because it was my first RAGBRAI using supplemental oxygen. And so my 3 previous RAGBRAIs, which were 17, 18, and 19, I did not have supplemental oxygen. But this year I did. I've been on oxygen since 2020. And honestly, I thought my RAGBRAI days were over until this year when I saw the route and I asked my team, I'm like, what do you guys think? And they said, we can do it. We'll figure this out. And so we did. We figured out how to carry supplemental oxygen for me.
And I need to explain what that means. Like, how do you carry supplemental oxygen while you're riding a bicycle?
Good question. Yeah. So, because it was definitely one that we made the decision to do it. And then it was figuring out, okay, how do we actually do this? And it was a lot of trial and error. So I will say training did not start as early as we would have liked, because just figuring out logistics of how do I actually do this. Because I'm on what's called an E-tank, which is 29 inches tall, 10.5 pounds. And so I had to figure out how could I carry oxygen to actually be on my oxygen.
Right.
And then how long is that oxygen going to last? And then how am I going to carry extra oxygen? Because one tank is not going to last me very long. So the logistics of that, I was able to strap a tank horizontally to my bike on the back, and with the conservator right under my seat, so I could turn up the oxygen very easily. I could reach it with my hand and turn it up anywhere from when I was training, I was doing 8 to 10 liters, but actually on the route, it was so hilly, I was using 15 liters out there. So I was glad that I was able to turn it up. And then, so I carried one tank, and then we were able to figure out how 2 of my teammates could each carry 2 tanks each. And kind of, they put them on the backs of their bikes, kind of like panniers.
Oh, okay.
But they were bags that were made for oxygen tanks, so they fit the oxygen tank perfectly. And then we just put them down the backs of the bikes. So definitely it added, 21 pounds to each of their bikes to carry those 2 extra tanks. So I had 5 oxygen tanks out on the route with me at all times.
I'm assuming that each tank, there's a point when you know that it's time to switch out?
Yes and no. I wish it was a better system, but with the tanks, honestly, there's no warning system that you're out. It's just you're breathing, and all of a sudden, you know that there's no more, there's not extra oxygen coming. So there was a couple times that were a little bit scary when I actually ran out and didn't realize I was so close to running out. And one was halfway up a hill that we had to stop. And honestly, though, we were like the Indy pit crew with the oxygen tanks. And they, my team, they were amazing. They jumped off their bikes, grabbed the extra tank, got it over to me, and got my tank out. And they can change my tank in less than a minute. So
wow.
they were pretty amazing.
I'm guessing if you think of your first day doing this versus your last day, it was like a well-oiled machine by then, right?
Oh, it was definitely a well-oiled machine. Yes.
Do you want to talk about the people that you rode with?
Absolutely. So I had my husband, who he carried 2 tanks for me, And then Randine's brother, Steve, he carried 2 tanks for me. Those guys were amazing. And those were the 2 that carried the tanks for the first 5 days. And then actually my nephew, Harry, carried the 2 extra tanks. My husband passed on the last 2 days after the first 5. So then my nephew, Harry, carried the 2 extra tanks the last 2 days. So then it was Harry and Steve. And we had my niece Brittany out there with me, my one of my best friends, Jennifer, of course, my best friend Randine, and then of course we had support drivers, because although all of us out there riding were amazing, we still needed support drivers to carry all the tanks, to change out the empty with fresh tanks all the time. So our support drivers were Kyle and Wayne and Betsy Frame, and they were amazing.
So did you start your adventure, you're like, all right, we're going to do RAGBRAI this year. Did you have to calculate out and have an entire vehicle full of these oxygen tanks, or can you, fill them at various places along the route?
That's a really good question. I actually made the assumption that I needed to have enough oxygen tanks to get me through the whole route. And honestly, I didn't think we could carry that many tanks. So we started with 43 tanks, and we had an RV that we had them in. And so I rode all the way through Indianola for the first 5 days. And then at Indianola, I only had 6 tanks left. So that's when, being from the Des Moines area, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with RAGBRAI. Like, I need to go home. I don't have enough oxygen. So that's what we did. We came home, and on Thursday morning, Steve called and said, I really want to finish. And I said, I really want to finish too. And I feel like it's not complete yet. And so I called my oxygen company here in Des Moines, and they said, absolutely, Barb, we will bring you more tanks.
Oh, wow.
They brought me 25 more tanks and came and took my 42 empty ones and switched them out. And so we went back out on Friday and were able to finish the last half of Friday and all day Saturday. Wow. Yeah, we went through 61 tanks altogether.
Wow.
It was a lot of oxygen.
Right. But it got you across the state of Iowa.
It did.
And Randine, can you kind of give us an idea of what your RAGBRAI experience was like with this crew?
Well, we had 3 of our team members that did the whole thing, and one was a newbie, and he was a lot of fun. His name was Justin. And so we had that lovely day off because we thought we were done Wednesday. And so Thursday was our day of relaxing, which we were getting in more tanks. So we joined the group back on Friday. And those 3 that had been riding the whole time were like, oh, Barb, we're so glad you're back. Now we can go at a slower pace and slow down. And but that was not the case, because Barb got a second wind. And she was riding very fast. The team was not very happy with her. They were trying to always use her as an excuse, but when she had that breath of fresh air, she was fast.
Oh, that's awesome. And Barb,
sorry.
Go ahead.
We dealt with a lot of wind, though, on that Friday and Saturday. So that was different than all the hills from before.
Yeah, I agree. And, the temperatures weren't really, really hot, but I think the humidity just made it feel a little bit, the air was really thick. I don't know if you noticed that too.
I did, yeah.
I noticed it for sure.
Right. Okay, so Barb, what made you decide that you wanted to do RAGBRAI, knowing that you had all of this logistical things that you had to work through?
Yeah. Honestly, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it.
Yeah. And you did.
And I did.
Yeah. That's awesome. Any favorites that either of you can think about, as whether it's a community or a person or food?
Yes, I will tell you, Fairfield, when we started back on Friday, the Fairfield Methodist Church was my favorite. They had an amazing meal and at such a low cost. It was $5 for a burger, chips, and a drink. And then they had pie, and they also had something really unique, which was their prayer table. So you could sit down and write up a prayer or ask for prayers. And I got a picture of Barb doing that. I just thought that was really nice. Yeah. And they all had been following this story on social media. So that was kind of cool, too. So that was my favorite, the Methodist Church stop.
Yeah. And for me, my favorite was actually in Fontenelle, where we had hopped on there, and I was just getting on. Some people, we were parked by the fire department, and it was me with being on oxygen and my husband, and we were trying to unload the bikes, and one of the volunteers, came over and helped my husband get the bikes down. And then another volunteer saw that I was on oxygen, and she came over and asked me, and she said, "Do you need any oxygen tanks filled?"
Oh.
And I did not know that. Various, not all fire departments, but many fire departments will actually fill oxygen tanks for you. Oh. And I think that's a great piece of information to be out there, because I had no idea. And my oxygen company had no idea. They did not know that fire departments do that. And so even on Saturday, when I went into Mediapolis, I asked their fire department, and they did fill an oxygen tank for me that day too. Like, that was a great piece of information for me to learn. And I honestly, I hope there's other people in the future that we see out there on oxygen, and that would make a huge difference to be able to know that.
Right. I was just going to say, that's a great tip for anybody in your situation, even if they're not riding RAGBRAI, just to know that there may be an opportunity if you find a fire station.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So Fontenelle, and they had great pie in Fontenelle too.
Yeah. I lost track of how many pieces of pie I ate, but it was a few.
I was going to say, another favorite thing about RAGBRAI is being able to eat whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Pie for breakfast, it doesn't matter.
Oh, exactly.
So one of you, I think it might have been Randine, said, made reference to your social media accounts. So people could follow along with your journey, and I'm assuming that there's more to come as far as what happens to you next. So will you share those social media accounts?
Go ahead, Randine.
We have a Facebook page called Adventures with Barb and Randine. We also are on YouTube and have an Instagram page.
I know people might have just thought, "Oh, what did Randine just say?" And the reason our social media page is called that is because the reason my lungs are deteriorating is because of an autoimmune disease called Scleroderma. And so whenever I say Scleroderma, people most of the time will say sclero what? And so that's an easy way to remember it. It's Sclero what? Adventures with Barb and Randine.
Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes so that people can follow along if they don't know how to spell that as we talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Barb, tell us, what does the future hold? Are you going to be able to do RAGBRAI in the future? Are you going to be on oxygen forever? Do you have a plan yet?
Yeah, well, so I will be doing RAGBRAI, but probably with some new lungs. I actually will be getting a double lung transplant in probably the next 3 to 6 months.
Oh my gosh, that is super, super exciting and probably pretty scary too.
It is. I met with the transplant team yesterday, and the doctor said, "It's time. It is time, Barb. Your lungs served you well, and they served you well, and it's now time to put them to rest."
So new lungs. Hopefully next year you're back for RAGBRAI, and your team, they're going to be mad at you because you're going to be ultra fast and
I know
20 pounds lighter with no oxygen tanks.
I know that they'll be ultra fast too because they won't be carrying as much.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. So next year with new lungs.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting. Well, we'll be keeping our eye on your social media accounts and cheering you on from afar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. And thank you both for coming on the podcast to share your story.
Thanks, Murph, for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Just Go Bike podcast. Murph and AP will be back next week. In the meantime, check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And if you would like to contact Murph and AP with a comment about the podcast, or maybe you have a topic in mind, email them at justgobikepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, especially if you're a fan. Until next time,
Just go bike.
Theme song by Ryan Steer, logo by Suzanne Milosevic, produced by Kathy Murphy, social media by Andrea Parrott, intro by Pumpkin. Until next time, just go bike.